report was out this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about what was in that. A lot of numbers in this one. This was our first look at new crop 2025 and 26. But first, let's go back. This is the old crop 2024-25 ending stocks. What surprised you here, Randy?
Well, there wasn't a tremendous. Well, I guess the thing that surprised was the fact that they did go in and increase exports for soybeans. Didn't expect to see that happen because we haven't been running that far ahead of USDA's projections. But they did increase exports by the 25 million. That followed all the way through to lower stocks by the same amount. So that was one of the things that was a surprise. We didn't expect we'd see that for old crop soybeans. Wheat, we also saw some neutral to friendly numbers as food demand was to come in and increased. Didn't expect to see any increases in wheat demand. So that was a little bit of a surprise. And it did lower stocks a little bit for old crop. Of course, we did expect to see some changes to corn. Was surprised that it was only 50 million in the exports. Some were expecting to see an adjustments in ethanol. But for corn and soybeans, well, for all three of the crops, actually, the old crop numbers were supportive.
And then moving on to the new crop, we got numbers today on corn production, soybean production for this year. What do you think about that?
Well, the corn production number came in a little bit higher than anticipated by the trade. 33 million bushels, not a big deal. I mean, it was fairly close. But when you look at it, that it was 953 million bushels above last year, that kind of puts a little bit of a, you'd think a little bearish spin on it. But with the increase in acres, yield being bumped up to trend line, we knew that we would be looking at a large production number. What surprised me is that how small the soybean one was. Even though we're coming in with the yield as expected with the lower acres, we're not looking at much of a change from last year for production. And actually, it was a little bit less than anticipated by the trade, or a little less than last year, about the same as expected by the trade.
We also saw updated winter wheat numbers.
I guess no big surprises in these numbers. When you look at them, I mean, all wheat is going to come in a little bit less than last year. Winter wheat's going to be a little bit higher. Likely, we're going to see a little bit higher yield. We're still waiting to see where this crop's going to come as it's going through its crop development stages now. Spring wheat just getting planted. But if you look at these numbers, you can kind of estimate that they look for hard red other spring wheat and durum numbers to come in close to 557 million bushels, which is going to be down quite a bit from last year's production if these numbers hold to where where they are right now.
And that brings us to new crop ending stocks.
This is where things came in to be a little bit more of a surprise to the market. Wheat number came in negative as we're almost a billion bushels. I mean, it was 66 above expectations, 82 above last year. Not a good sign for wheat. That's what turned it to be a little bit bearish on the wheat side of things. On the corn side, it was actually friendly. We're expecting to see the ending stocks closer to 2 billion. It came in at 1.8. That's friendly. Over 200 million bushels less than expected. Higher, of course, than last year, but still, any kind of a crop production issue is going to be is going to be important to be watching as far as corn production is concerned. Same goes for soybeans at 295. I mean, that was 80 million less than anticipated by the trade. So that does tell us that any kind of hiccup in production could cause some pretty big move as far as these markets are concerned.
And then we've got updated average national prices for the 25-26 crop year. And like you said, with corn, with the demand increasing and stuff, we were surprised to see that price go down actually from last year.
Was surprised to see it go down from last year, especially when we're looking at tight stocks already. We start trimming a little bit of yield off of, our trend line. We take one bushel off, you're going to drop it by 90 million bushels. So I was surprised that the price didn't see a little bit better performance. Soybeans, which are looking at it, lower stocks, but still, still fairly, close to 300. Soybean price went up nice though for the national average. So it tells us that they're a little bit more concerned about the production on soybeans, and they're thinking demand is going to be fairly strong.
We also did get updates on South American production. Of course, this crop is mostly harvested now, especially on the soybean side in Brazil.
Which we didn't see big changes there. That, I mean, to the point you made that its harvest is almost done, so we didn't see big changes on the soybean side of things. And with harvest going on with corn and soybeans in Argentina, not big changes there. The big change and what was maybe probably the one thing that was a little negative on corn was the big increase we saw in Brazil's corn production estimate. 4 million up from last month, 2.3 above expectations. That tells us that the rain was beneficial and they're looking at a little better corn crop.
And that brings us to old crop world ending stocks.
Again, corn and soybeans friendly. The number, actually corn a little bit bullish because they saw numbers coming in below expectations and below last month. Soybeans coming in just minor changes. Wheat, on the other hand, not as good a picture as we were seeing a big increase in the expectations, bigger increase from the previous month. A lot of that due to an increase in the EU wheat production estimate.
And then again, this is moving on to the new crop, the 25-26 crop. And again, big increase in EU wheat. In Brazil soybeans, we're starting that off at 175 for the upcoming year.
That's a bit of a shocker of a number to look at, but you're looking at more acres and up 6 million from this year's projection. So that's we're starting right out of the gate with some negative numbers or some poor look for the 25-26 year for Brazil and even Argentina soybeans. Looks like it could be a fairly good sized crop over there. Argentina corn increasing a little bit. Not seeing much change in the corn for Brazil, but again, these are really just estimates as these crops haven't even been thought about getting planted yet in a lot of them. So these numbers will change, but right now they're not looking as friendly as what we'd like to see.
And that takes us to the last slide, which is new crop world ending stocks. Big change on the corn there.
Huge change in the corn. I mean, that's a big number. 20.2 less than anticipated by the trade, 9.5 less than the previous year. So you can tell that corn is the favored market right now as far as demand is concerned. Soybeans also being a little bit friendly and not much change in those numbers. But again, wheat coming in a little bit negative as we're looking at, like you mentioned, EU production again for new crop, really kind of making this number look a little bit bearish.
That is what we got. Anything else you want to say to wrap this up?
Well, the big thing to look at is that, this report was negative to the wheat market. It's going to take a little bit more for that market to climb out of it, especially with good growing conditions and rapid planting. Corn and soybeans reports were bullish on both of those, U.S. numbers and world numbers. Any kind of a weather issue is going to cause these markets to have a little bit of an opportunity for a little bit of a bounce. So I think, right now we've got an interesting spring that's going to be coming in front of us, but we're going to have to watch weather as that could cause these markets to see some pretty good weather spikes.
That's all we got for today. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, of course, give our office a call.